Hi, I'm Mary Jane Toth. I want to thank you for joining us today as we work through another recipe from my book, A Cheesemaker's Journey. Hello everyone and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Mary Jane Toth, author of A Cheesemaker's Journey. And today I want to show you how to make feta cheese. This is going to be the mild version, and for those of you who think you don't like feta because of the sharp piquant taste that you have with the strung, this is perfect for you. This one is mild, sweet, delicious, a little bit salty, and it's great on salads and many other dishes as well. In my book, I have cheeses rated from 1 to 5, from easy to hard, and this one is rated a number 2. It's so easy, anyone can make this cheese. Now let's show you all of the equipment that you will need to get started making the mild feta cheese. You're going to need a stainless steel pot with a lid that can hold 2 gallons of milk. You're also going to need a colander for draining the curds and a pan that you can drain the whey into. And then you're going to need a measuring cup. You're going to need to have a knife that can reach to the bottom of the pot. This is a curd knife. You can use any knife in your kitchen that reaches to the bottom of the pot, but this is specifically for cheese making. This is called a skimmer, which helps us to bring the curds up from the bottom of the pot so that we can cut them and make sure they're looking right. You will need a thermometer. This is a cheese making quality thermometer. It registers from 40 to 220 and also has a hanging little clip on the side so that you can hang it on the side of the pot and monitor the temperature. Then you're also going to need some measuring spoons. You're going to need a timer so you can keep track of the time. And then you're going to need a plastic dish with a lid like this because that will help us to age the feta cheese and salt it. Then you're also going to need to have some kind of a string to tie up your cheese. This is what I use at my house. You can find some other kind of string if you don't like this idea, but this is probably pretty recognizable to everybody. It's a shoelace. And yes, once in a while I have stolen them out of my tennis shoes, bleached them and washed them and used them, especially when the shoes got worn out and the laces still look great. Now, one thing you're going to want to make sure you do is to knot the edges of the shoelace, each one, because I've learned from experience when I go to tie up my bag of curds, if they're not knotted, that little loop can slip out, plop into the pan, and then whey will just fly all over your counter. That you want to avoid. And then you will also need a good quality muslin type cheesecloth. This one I got from Hager's Supply. I've had the same cheesecloth for many, many years. I wash it, bleach it, reuse it, and it's fantastic. Let me get it open so I can show you just exactly how thin it is and how wonderful it is for draining cheese. Do not buy cheesecloth at the grocery store. It is not a cheesemaker's cheesecloth. It's way too thin, has big holes in it. Your cheese will run right through it. And that's basically for using when people are varnishing and cleaning the dust off their furniture. So make sure you get a good quality cheesecloth. Let's start with the list of ingredients that you need to make this cheese. You need to have a good feta culture. I get mine from Hager's Supply. It is a freeze-dried DVI direct vat inoculate, which means that you can sprinkle it directly into the milk and you don't need to culture it first. So it's very convenient for beginning cheese makers or for anybody who's making cheese because you don't have to worry about the quality of it and how it's going to set, and you keep it in the freezer when you're not using it. It lasts a long time. Then you're going to need a cheesemaker's quality salt. This is a real fine grade. However, if you don't have cheesemaker salt, you can also use any non-iodized salt. If you do happen to put iodized salt into your cheese, you're going to end up with green cheese, and nobody wants to eat green cheese. You also need some rennet. I prefer the liquid rennet. This is a vegetarian type. You can also get tablet rennet. Either one will work fine for this recipe, but today we're going to use the liquid. If you're using store-bought milk, you need to add calcium chloride to get a firmer set. This is a product that cheesemakers regularly use when they make it in a manufacturing situation because they bring milk from all different dairies together and they can't be sure of the quality and the calcium level of it, so they add calcium chloride to make sure they have a good set. Then you're going to need some non-chlorinated water. And then to the milk. You need to get your milk. If you have your own dairy animals, whether it's a cow or a goat, that's fantastic. This happens to be store-bought milk, so you can make it really well. Just with the addition of the calcium chloride, it's going to be great. Now I'm finishing up adding the rest of the milk to my pot, 2 gallons of whole milk. And I do prefer whole milk for making my cheese. And we need to hang the thermometer on the side so that we can monitor the temperature. And we are going to warm this pot up to 86 degrees. We're not going to put this in a double bat system to do this because we're going to watch it real close and give it a stir and make sure it doesn't get overheated. So let's turn the stove on and we'll begin heating it up. And when it reaches 86 degrees, we will add the culture. Now our milk has reached 86 degrees, so we need to add our calcium chloride. And this needs to be diluted in water first, so we're going to use a half a cup of water. And then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of calcium chloride per 2 gallons of milk. Give it a good stir and stir it into the milk. You don't have to be real fanatical about this. Just give it a few stirs so you know that it's stirred throughout. We're going to give it another stir again in a minute when we add our culture anyway, so that's not too critical. So now we're going to need, we don't need the water anymore. We're going to add our feta culture. And remember, this is a DVI culture, so we do not need to put it into water first. And we are going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon for 2 gallons of milk. And all you really need to do with this, sprinkle it over the milk so that it gets rehydrated nicely. Just like that, super easy. And we're gonna give it a good stir. And now we're ready to let it set and incubate for an hour. And we'll come back to it and add our rennet. So take the thermometer out, put the lid on. It needs to be held at the temperature of 86 degrees for the full hour, but not to worry because a stainless steel pot with a lid on is going to hold that heat in there. And when we come back, it's not going to drop to more than a couple of degrees and it'll be just fine. Now that our milk has reached 86 degrees, we are ready to put the rennet in. This is the coagulating agent. So I'm going to give it a quick stir just to make sure it's 86 from top to bottom. And then for this, you're going to need to add a half a cup of water to your measuring cup. And we need 1 teaspoon of rennet. This is per 2 gallons of milk. Rennet is really nice to have because it mixes so easily in the water. And when you have tablet, you have to crush it and get it to dissolve in the water. So that's why I really do prefer the liquid. And if you have a choice, why not get what works the best first? Okay, let's give this a quick stir. And stir the whole time that you're pouring it in there because it starts to coagulate almost instantly and you don't want it to get too thick in one spot before you've had a chance to give it a thorough stir. Now we're going to need to stop stirring and don't come back and stir it anymore now for 1 full hour because it's going to coagulate and it needs to set. So we take the thermometer out, put a lid on the pot to help you hold the temperature. And I'm going to take it off of this burner because it's electric and I don't want it to keep on heating my curds past the temperature that I have them at. Now that our pot has been sitting for an hour coagulating, we're ready to cut the curds. So let's remove the lid and see how they look. If you want to test the curd for coagulation, you can put your finger in the middle and bring it up, and when it does a nice clean break over your finger, it's ready to cut. This is actually perfect. So let's get our curd knife out and begin cutting the curds. Now you want to start in the middle because I've learned over time that if you start on the outside edges, as the wave fills the depressions that you're making, it starts to slide around and it's hard to cut it evenly. So we're going to cut this into 1/2-inch cubes or 1-inch cubes. It really doesn't matter if you're really specific and tight on those because it's going to shrink in size anyway, and if you miss a few, you can always chop them up later. So you want to make all your cuts in the same direction first, and then go back to the other half and do that one. And then we're going to come back the other way and also start in the middle again. This is not a scientific process. The whole idea is just to get your curds a little smaller so they can start to lose their way and express it out and make you that beautiful cheese. Okay, now just to get the little sideways cut, because you're going to get all these long strips of cheese that you've cut in there, just do a little quick swish through with a knife like this in one direction, come back with the other direction, and that's good. See how easy that is? Now we're going to let this rest for 5 minutes so that the curds can gently express that way, and we'll come back and then we're going to stir it. Now that our curds have rested for 5 minutes, we're ready to begin the stirring process. So let's remove the lid and we're going to give it a quick stir, very slowly and gently. You don't have to do it too many times. You want to bring the curds up and chop up any curds that you see that look a little bit bigger than the rest. The whole idea here is just to express the whey slowly. And you need to keep your curds at the temperature of 86 degrees for 15 minutes. And if you have a problem keeping it at that temperature, you can use a sink of hot water to help hold that. Ours is staying comfortably at 86, and so it's perfect. You're going to want to stir once every 5 minutes for 15 minutes, and then we'll be ready to drain. Now that our curds have been 15 minutes setting and have been stirred once every 5 minutes, I'm going to just check them, give it another stir, and they look perfect. If you can see, they're all nicely even sized, shrinking up beautifully. We're ready to drain. So let's take them over to the sink where I have a colander already lined with cheesecloth. And I'm going to place this in the sink because it's going to be a lot easier to drain all of that whey into the sink than it is to try to lift this big bag of curds. So let's set this down into the sink. And we're going to pour in our curds. This can get to be a little sloppy, so pour gently at first until you get a good flow going. Oh, I see some of that splashing. Ooh, I don't like that. But the curds look beautiful. Now our little colander's getting full, so let's just let it drain for a second, and then we'll add the rest of the curds. Let me lift it up and you can see just how much of the whey is actually draining off. Beautiful. Okay, we're ready to add the rest of the curds. There, now we can place our pot over there and tie up this bag of curds. Now, if you happen to have knobs on your cupboards that are round where you can hang this bag, it's really great. If you don't happen to have cupboards like that, and if you notice here in my kitchen I have close-handled cupboards, you can actually put an S-hook on there that'll help you hang that bag of curds. So let's tie this up and I'll show you exactly how I do it. Let me bring this up a little bit so that you can see a little better. It's draining whey, so you want to have a big bowl there to catch it. So let's slide that thing to the edge, put our shoelace around it, making sure you have those knots in there like I warned you. Don't want that thing falling down. Give it a good tight tie. We're not actually making a knot, and I fold over the excess cheesecloth, and then I just make myself a little bow, just like you're tying your shoes. That easy. And once I have the two little loops, I just put them together, slide over here to my S-hook, and I hang it on the S-hook to finish draining. Whoops, it just dropped my S-hook. Let's hook it in. There we go. Now we have kind of a low, it's kind of hanging down kind of low, so I'm going to tell you what you need to do if that happens to you and your string is kind of long. You can just grab this little middle part where you've already made kind of a loop, and if you slide this up and put your S-hook on that, as well as the loops, they'll both be together and your bag will hang a little bit higher. See how much better that hangs. We've now had our cheese hanging for 6 hours, so let's show you how to get it salted and ready for aging. So I'm going to go over here and get the bag of curds so you can see what they look like. We haven't had them over here hanging. They have firmed up quite a bit. So let's open this baby up and see what great cheese we have. Be careful when you're taking the cheesecloth off because you don't want to tear the curds, so you want to be kind of gentle about that. And it's formed into quite a nice firm little ball by now. And let me show you how we can even pick it up. It's still not totally as firm as it's going to be when we finish, so that's why we need to be real careful about that process. And we have a beautiful ball of cheese. Now we need to slice this into thirds so that we can do the salting process. And for this, you're going to need your plastic dish that I showed you earlier. And you don't really need a sharp knife, so the curd knife is going to work really well because the cheese is still very tender at this stage. So just do kind of an approximate guess of what 1/3 looks like for it. Looks beautiful. And I'm going to show you that it has formed into a nice, kind of a soft cheese. It almost has still a little bit of a gelatinous texture to it. It's not totally firmed up like feta should be yet because we haven't gone through the salting process. But not to worry, that's going to change. It's going to undergo an amazing transformation once we have 12 hours or 24 hours go by. So let's begin the salting process. Now for your salt, you want to measure out 4 to 5 tablespoons of salt because feta is one of those cheeses that is salty by nature, but you don't want to get carried away adding too much salt or you'll end up with a cheese that's not edible. So it's best if you measure out 4 to 5 tablespoons before you begin, so that way you know when to stop sprinkling on the salt. It's so tempting when you walk by to just add a little bit more. So to start this, we're going to sprinkle both sides of the cheese with salt, just very lightly like you were salting some food. And you want to do the other side as well. So sprinkle all sides, kind of rub the salt on there. Love the cheese a little bit. It's going to be so delicious when we're done. And then you just want to place it into your plastic dish. You need to use plastic because if you use an aluminum dish, it's going to leach onto the cheese and make it funny colored, and you don't want that to happen. So we'll finish rubbing the salt around here on our cheese. It's very easy. Laying them into our dish. Now this cheese is going to weep quite a bit once we add the salt because it draws out the moisture. And that's the good thing because it firms up the cheese. And if you have a lumpy side like this, don't worry because as it sits, it's going to kind of flatten out and we're going to be turning it various times during the day so it'll end up all being a nice smooth cheese that you can handle very well. Now we have it in the dish. And what you need to do is keep a lid on the dish because if you have flies or anything else running around, you don't want it to get into your cheese. But every once in a while, you're going to come back, take the lid off, add a little more sprinkling of salt on it, flip the cheese over, and then you're going to do that a few times until you've used up your 4 to 5 tablespoons of salt that you have. And at that point, you stop adding salt. But you allow this to set at room temperature for 24 hours. And after 24 hours, you take it out of the dish and put it in the refrigerator and age it for about 7 days. Our feta cheese has been sitting in the plastic container now for about 3 hours. And it's time for us to give it another salting. So I want you to see what it looks like when we take it out. And the best thing to do is take a look at it when you've got it here. Flip your sides over, but let's salt the top sides of it first. And then I'm going to lift it up and you'll be able to see how much of the whey has already come out of the cheese. And remember, just lightly salt because you still have a little time left that you can put the salt on and you don't want to over salt. So let's gently flip our cheeses over. And I'm going to lift this one to the side a little bit because I want you to see that we already have quite a bit of liquid there that's come off. You can leave that on or you can pour it off. It really isn't going to affect the cheese if you take it off. I oftentimes just go ahead and pour it off. It's just easier for me to manage the cheese. And the salt is actually what's firming up that cheese, and you're going to lose a lot more whey before you're done with this whole process. Okay. And then put the lid back on and let her set for another 5 or 6 hours. Give it a light salt again, and after 24 hours, you'll be ready to take it out of this dish and wrap it in plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator. Age it for 7 days. It's ready to eat, if you can wait that long. Now that we've made our feta cheese, I'm ready to show you how to make a real good treat. We're going to make a marinated feta cheese that your neighbors are absolutely going to love, and your friends, your relatives, any party that you take it to, people are going to rave. You're going to look like a real cheese making pro if you make this dish. This is a beautiful marinated feta. We have garlic toes in here, sun-dried tomatoes, a variety of fresh herbs. Absolutely fantastic. The equipment that you're going to need for this is going to be a canning jar with a lid. It can be a pint or quart size. You'll need a cutting board, and you'll also need a knife to cut up your feta. Now the ingredients that you're going to need will be, of course, your beautiful feta cheese, a variety of herbs and spices. Let me show you what we have here. This just happens to be one of my favorite mixes. We have fresh oregano, fresh rosemary, and basil from the garden. We have sun-dried tomatoes and some garlic toes. You can also use cracked pepper, peppercorns, thyme, any aromatic spice or herb that you have in your kitchen, hot peppers, Spice it up a little, make it your own. It'll just be absolutely gorgeous and you will get so many compliments. So let's begin. Oh, excuse me, I need to finish up the ingredients. You also need a good grade quality virgin olive oil. I have also used canola oil and vegetable oil with really good results as well. So let's begin. Take our jar. Now, let's start by cutting up our cheese. Now, you don't have to be real specific about this. You can just kind of cut it in nice little cubes. If it crumbles, that's okay. Just as delicious that way as any other. And the real beauty of this dish is that you don't really need to refrigerate it. As long as all of the cheese is covered in oil, it can sit on your counter and it will keep perfectly well. I keep mine by the refrigerator, and every time my husband walks by the refrigerator, he opens that jar and pops a piece in his mouth. So people often ask me, well, how long will this last? And I say, well, till you eat it up. So how fast can you eat? Okay, let's put some of the cheese into the bottom, and then we're going to add a few toes of garlic. And this is just all, you know, make it look pretty how you feel. I like to add a little bit of the basil leaves in there. And then let's put in a little bit of rosemary. Smells so good. And then the sun-dried tomatoes, I kind of like to stick them on the outside of the jar so that you can see them in there real good and they look real pretty. And then add some more feta cheese. You want to do this in layers, kind of like you were making lasagna or something. Add a few more toes of garlic. A little bit more basil. I got to tell you, these herbs are so fresh. I can smell them. Too bad we don't have smell-o-vision on this. And let's add a little bit more thyme. Almost forgot to do that. Excuse me, rosemary. Said that wrong. Okay, and some of this fresh oregano. Oh, it's looking good already. Let's put in the sun-dried tomatoes. I think I'll put about 3 of them this time around the side. A little bit more cheese. If you get kind of sloppy like me, that's all right. Just clean it up and put her in. I wouldn't trust anybody who didn't cook and love it and make a mess while they're doing it. Okay, let's pop in some more garlic cloves just to add something to the top. And it looks like it's about full and it's ready for me to add my oil. I think I'll add a little bit of basil to the top just because I like to see that sitting on there when I open it up. It looks so pretty. And now we're ready to add some olive oil. And all you need to do is just pour it in until you've covered everything. This is so easy. What's amazing is how easy it is and just how good it is. How pretty it looks. It's gorgeous. Make sure all the cheese and the herbs are under the oil to preserve it. Pop on a lid and you are done. Now, wouldn't you like to serve this to your next party or be the neighbor who gets this as a beautiful gift? Yum. Thank you for joining us today. I love making feta and I hope you enjoy it too. Hi, I'm Mary Jane Toth, author of A Cheesemaker's Journey, and I'd like to tell you about something exciting that's happening at HagerFarmYard.com. I'd like to invite you to become part of our online cheese making community. You're going to find helpful articles, recipes, and videos, and even a forum on there where you can post cheese making questions. I'm very excited to be part of this adventure, and I look forward to helping you be successful in your own cheese making journey.